Our first speaker is Mitch Wiley, the Senior Marketing Manager, Sponsorship and Retail at Nissen, Australia. Mitch has over a decade's experience in the automotive industry and has worked in a variety of marketing roles across retail, brand, corporate and partnership strategy. During his 7 years at Mitsubishi Motors, Mitch was responsible for the company's retail marketing strategy before moving into a sponsorship role, leveraging Mitsubishi's portfolio, including its 4-year partnership with the Australian Olympic team. In 2014, Mitch moved to Nissen, Australia to help shape the brand's motorsport strategy and oversee local activation of global partnerships such as City Football Group and the UEFA Champions League. Over the past 3 years, Mitch has been instrumental in Nissen Australia's sponsorship strategy development, including signing the landmark partnership with Netball Australia. Please welcome Mitch Wiley.
So this morning, I guess my job is to take you through a sponsor's perspective of the importance of sport and the importance of sports marketing. Obviously, Bridget will cover marketing in detail, but I just wanted to provide I guess some perspective, not only as a sponsor, but also what's happening in the automotive industry and why sports marketing and sports sponsorship is so important. So I guess the two key takeouts for us in the recent memory, last 5 years or so, is that sport is definitely changing, but so are sponsors. And the way that we are being approached by prospective sports, and also the way that we are measuring success, the way that we're dealing with our customers and the way that we're dealing with fans has also changed. We've seen a huge change in how people are starting to interact with brands that sponsor sport. We're seeing obviously the influx of services like Netflix, where people are prepared to pay hard-earned money so that they don't have to watch advertising. And as a marketer, that's a real challenge. And sport gives us a really unique opportunity to speak to these customers in another way. So why sponsorship and why sport? Obviously, a modern marketing budget is made up of all sorts of channels, and sponsorship is just one of those things. So I just wanted to touch on some of the things that, of course, we're noticing. Some of this will be obvious, but from an automotive perspective, why it's important. And the first is investment versus clutter. So if we talk about a traditional marketing mix of above-the-line media, obviously we're competing against a huge amount of other automotive manufacturers. And to give you some insight into that, Australia per capita is by an eye-watering amount the most competitive automotive market in the world. We have over 66 brands in Australia that you can buy for a population of 25 million. To put that into perspective, in the US, with their population of around 340 million, they have 40 brands. So as you can imagine, as an automotive marketer, it's really, really difficult to differentiate yourself. Now, the beauty of going into sport and into sponsorship is that it gives us the opportunity to speak with fans on a one-to-one basis, but the way that we're speaking to those fans is totally different to what it was 10, 15 years ago, where it was definitely around the return on investment modelling was around QI indexing and logo exposures. And as I'm sure all the rights holders are aware, that is becoming less and less relevant. Appeal to target audience. I know that seems like a really obvious call out. And of course, any media strategy gives you the opportunity to talk to a target audience. The difference with sport, of course, is that you're able to identify a target audience and speak to them when they are, I guess, in their most passionate mindset, which is really, really important. Not only that, but fans are more willing to give over their information to rights holders, to athletes. So from a marketer's point of view, it makes it a lot easier for us to identify who these people are and what they want, and also what their expectation is from people that sponsor sports. Mass reach goes without saying, certainly in Australia. You can't look past sport when you're looking at a sponsorship strategy. Over the last 15 months, we've overhauled our sponsorship strategy at Nissen Australia. And with our colleagues at Bastion EVA, we spent a lot of time identifying all the different options of sponsorship that existed, everything from music festivals, arts festivals, iconic venues, and by far and away the most obvious area to sponsor, of course, is sport. Australians are just mad for sport. And then, of course, outside of that, the important thing is to identify a sport that aligns with your brand the best. And the emergence of the importance of digital activation. And while we can no longer say that digital media and digital marketing is emerging, it certainly isn't anymore. It's obviously a core part of any marketing strategy. The ability as a sponsor to be able to connect with fans in sport through digital means is becoming more and more critical. And we're starting to see that sponsors like us are starting to move away from just doing hard activations at events. The importance of digital touch points is obviously becoming incredibly important. So obviously sport is changing, and I know there's a lot of people here that work in the sport industry, so I won't pretend to be an expert because I'm certainly not, but I wanted to call out the things that we're noticing from a sponsor's point of view, and how that changes our approach with sports. Venue upgrades. I'm sure everyone's seen the amazing footage of the Perth Stadium's lighting display that's come out this week. I mean, you have a look at some of the investment in infrastructure and connectivity at venues across the country, including the Adelaide Oval, and even at mobile events, whether they be music festivals or with us with motorsport, we're seeing supercars invest a huge amount more in their street racing infrastructure, which shows that, as per some of the numbers that were called out earlier, that sport and sport marketing is in a really healthy place at the moment. Short form sport. I heard a statistic on a podcast the other day, and I'm probably going to get this wrong, but I found it really interesting that the adult attention span used to be around 21 seconds, I think 15 years ago, and now it's around 8 seconds. We're still better than goldfish, but only marginally. I guess the importance of that is because of the fragmentation of media and the fact that we're seeing a general trend in research that general interest in sport is declining across the board, but consumption is increasing. And those of you that work with research agencies like Nissen will know that this is exactly where research is heading now. They're at a point where they have to identify, okay, we can see a trend that people are starting to come off from a general interest, but it's because they're more time poor and they're more interested in experiences rather than ownership, which is why it's important for us to start to map who's consuming what and provide, I guess, the best form of entertainment that we can, and for a sponsor to start to learn its place now that change is taking place. Just on short form sport quickly as well, we're seeing it through our portfolio, obviously, with netball with Fast 5, which is on in a couple of weeks here in Melbourne. If you haven't got a ticket, make sure you get along. It's going to be amazing. But we're also seeing it even in motorsport. Supercars are going to embark on night racing next year at Sydney Motorsport Park. And the reason they're doing that is they're seeing the success of T20 and Big Bash, which is huge, and they're trying to find a way of bringing a short form, more interesting form of motorsport to fans. So we're seeing it across the board, even in sports where you wouldn't think that it would be identified as an opportunity. The third point, of course, is the proliferation of esport. Some stats that I think are mind-boggling are that it's 41.3% year-on-year growth globally in revenue for the esport market. And the statistic is something crazy, like 98% of families in Australia that have kids 18 years or under have a gaming console. So esports, it's not coming, it's here, and we're already seeing traditional rights holders buy into esport teams. And with obviously calling out another obvious fact, I guess the increase of digital activation and the importance of it. The fact that fans are now using best available screen, and that when they're going to events and they're interacting with their sport, their digital connectivity is still really important. And as a sponsor, it's really important for us to find ways of interacting with the fans through that means. But sponsors are changing as well, and I just wanted to highlight some things that I've certainly seen happen in our industry, specifically at Nissen, but I'm sure that these are common across the market. Obviously, marketing budgets have changed. They're changed in the way that they're reported. They're changed in their structure, the volume that goes into traditional above-the-line media versus below-the-line digital, social. That's changed a lot in the last 10 years. But also every marketing dollar is being more heavily scrutinised than it ever has been. So as marketers, we're not allowed to be lazy anymore. I hear these rumours about the 1980s and long lunches, and I've never seen one of them, I swear. ROI modelling has improved out of sight. And that is a reflection of the fact that we're becoming better at how we budget for marketing moving forward. And as a result of that, logo exposures and QI modelling, which I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with. If you're not, it's effectively your media value of logo exposure calculated off how big the logo is on screen and then applied against a rack media rate. It's got its place, and I certainly I respect why it's there. But for brands, established brands like Nissen, while we expect our logos to be on uniforms and on race cars, we don't value the logo at all. We don't have a problem with awareness. Where we have a challenge is getting people to connect with us and understand who we are and to consider our product. So we're seeing that form of return on investment is starting to move away. I'm going to show you in a couple of slides a very high-level overview of what our ROI cadence looks like in motorsport and how it has changed, because we certainly were guilty of it 4 or 5 years ago, where we were reporting into Japan that our return on motorsport was based around what the media value was of logo exposures. And to be quite frank, for seasoned marketers and for established brands, it's probably a lazy way of doing it, and it's becoming more and more unacceptable. A rights holder's ability to build a digital community around a brand, around a sponsor, that is becoming really critical. It's certainly critical for us. We have invested a huge amount of time and money in motorsport, in investing in a digital community and providing bespoke content that they actually want to see and hear. One of the key learnings for any sponsor coming into a sport is that you have to complement the experience, you can't interrupt it. So the days of thinking that a 30-second TV ad appearing on big screens and things like that is actually going to have an impact are gone, because we know that adults are time poor and you end up interrupting the experience. So you have to find genuine ways of doing it. I know it seems so obvious, but for so many years, we weren't engaging in the right behaviour. Unexpected access is driving results. So I'll give you an example. We have a digital community around motorsport. We call that community Live to Race, and we provide them bespoke motorsport experiences, content, and it's all unique. And when they sign up to that database, probably 9 in 10 people will say, "Are you going to spam me?" It's getting so much harder to get people to surrender their details, and for good reason, because they're used to being spammed by people. So we made a decision early on when we set this up, and we've kept to it. And in the last 3.5 years, we have never once delivered a retail marketing message or any product information to this database. And I can tell you that the conversion in that database is 2 times higher than any other database that we have. And it shows that by providing a genuine reason for us to be there and supporting their experience in motorsport, over time, they repay us by considering us. Subjectivity is having less of an impact. Certainly, I think 10, 15 years ago and before that, it was commonplace that for rights holders, an easy way in, I guess, to get some funding, and we've certainly seen it across the board, is that if you find a CEO that has a passion for a sport, it becomes significantly easier to get them to engage in it. And that certainly was not different at Nissen in the early days, but thankfully we've got a really good management committee who said we want to knock the subjectivity out of how we make these decisions. So again, we worked with Bastian around building a program so that we could remove ourselves, because obviously we all have our own passions, our own sport passions, and wouldn't we love to be involved in those? We had to find a way of knocking out that subjectivity, and that's creating a robust return on investment matrix and understanding the sport before you engage with it. Now, while that can be a negative because it means that it can be more difficult to get sponsors to engage with the sport, the long-term benefit is that if you're on an option, so if you're getting a sponsor to sign a 3+2, you've got a much higher likelihood of that +2 actually being engaged, because the decision to go into the sport was made on robust data to start with. So sponsorships need to be relevant, measurable, and accessible, and those principles we live and die by at Nissen. And I'll give you an example with why that is important to us. Early on in the piece with motorsport, we'd launched the Ultima through that, and a lot of journos to this day will say to us, "Why is it that you're racing the Ultima? You know, you've stopped selling it in the market, and not only that, but it's the large car segment. It's not what it used to be. Why would you be promoting it?" Well, because we're not racing Ultima to sell Ultima. Ultima gives us the ability to go racing. If you look at the consumer profile of motorsport fans, they buy utes, they buy SUVs, and that's exactly what we sell. So while 20 years ago it was based on a production model and that could impact the sale of that car, it doesn't anymore. It's not relevant. And then when it comes to accessibility, this comes back to having a genuine connection between, as a sponsor, between you and the fan. And 9 times out of 10, it's going to have nothing to do with your product or service. It's going to be delivering them an experience so that when they walk away, they go, I got to do that because of Nissen. And it has nothing to do with our range of vehicles. Yet what we know through our research is that their propensity to consider us in future purchase decisions is increased because of that behaviour, because we don't interrupt their experience. So the traditional sponsorship model that we've seen previously, which this will be obviously most people in the room will understand this, which is that a brand like us, we would go and pay for the rights to a sport, and then the first thing you would do is go, oh God, now our competitors are probably going to buy up the broadcast and the digital inventory. We're going to have to go and buy that as well. Now that's great because it's a whole of sport approach. The problem that immediately comes up is most of your budget goes into paying for the rights before you've done anything. And so this model, while it absolutely still has a place to generate audience delivery, it's in an environment where marketing budgets are being scrutinised and reduced. This model is becoming more and more difficult for brands to get across the line, certainly at global level. And I want to give an example of an integrated model, which is an example of what we do with Netball Australia. So as a brand, we have one point of contact, which is Netball Australia. And in working with them over the last 15 months, the way that this has been structured really helped us get this across the line globally. And because most big corporates obviously are global businesses, we report into Japan. And so you can imagine there are a lot of different cultures and opinions. And because netball is so huge in Australia and some other markets, but not certainly in Japan, there's not a big footprint of netball in Japan. We had a lot of work to do just to explain the sport, the passion behind it, and the fact that of how professional they are. But going into netball and then being able to work with Nine and Telstra to give us those protections of inventory and broadcast, which you would have had to go and do a separate deal previously, having it all itemised into basically one contact and having it so economically it made sense for us, it means that we have budget to activate this property properly. And the benefit for the rights holder is that the longevity of programs like this will be far greater because we can see it working immediately. And year one with Suncorp Super Netball, we've had a great year. Like we're over-indexing against measures that we first implemented. We had some great activations, we had great learnings, but that was all because we've got a single point of contact at netball, and it's made it really, really easy to work with them. From our partnerships, I just want to quickly touch on our 3 major partnerships and give you some insights into how they work together. And then I'll quickly touch on a return on investment model and then show you some pretty videos, because what's a marketing presentation without a video? Obviously, Melbourne City Supercars and Netball. So Melbourne City is part of the City Football Group, which is made up of Manchester City, New York City, Yokohama Bay Marinos and Melbourne City. They're a great organisation, they're very good to work with. They give us global scope. That is part of a global agreement. V8 Supercars we've been involved in Supercars now, for 5 years, and obviously this is our first year with netball. But just showing you a couple of the key statistics, I guess. Interest and avidity, like if you look at general interest across the 3 sports, bearing in mind that the highest rating sport is AFL, it's obviously a powerhouse, and it generally is between 37 and 42%. The key thing for us is not so much that, yes, these are all in the top 20 sports, they all have significant awareness, they all have significant footprint, but you look at the participation in netball and soccer in Australia, it's absolutely huge. And our first customer is not someone that buys the car, it's the dealer that sells it. So for us to be able to take these properties to our dealer network so that they can have a relationship with their local clubs and association is really, really important. From a mass reach point of view, these properties give us access to 51% of the population, and the average sport crossover, which basically means someone that likes supercars is also potentially going to watch netball, going to watch A-League, is around 30%. The reason that that is important to us is that you'll note if you look at some of our content that we promote, wherever we can, we try to get the sports to work with each other. And to their credit, the 3 properties, even though they technically compete, they do work really well together. So when we launched the Melbourne City Football Club partnership last year, we did it through supercars, which seems odd, but when you look at the amplification that we got through that, it was absolutely extraordinary. And we're noticing that you look at organic reach, videos and content where we're cross-promoting athletes and codes, for some reason, people are a lot more interested in watching. But the key takeout for us is that the work that we've done around aligning ourselves to people that we want to talk to, yes, that's demography, but it's also things like ability to activate the sport more than 9 months of the year, access to digital touchpoints and digital community. Those key engagement pillars for us, the score for us is 73%. So what this shows is that we've worked really hard to make sure that our sports marketing structure is really, really robust and that the three properties can work together. I just want to talk about very quickly an ROI cadence using motorsport as an example. So this matches a pretty traditional, I guess, consumer purchase funnel, which is not being in market through to consideration, through to purchase and post-purchase. This looks really simplistic, but what I want to call out is fan base is everything from spontaneous awareness through to emotional connection to the brand. And something that you'll see with motorsport that's really unique for automotive manufacturers is that the fans actually cheer for us, which, you know, how many brands have the opportunity to do that? Like when Usain Bolt does a sub 10, people aren't screaming, go Nike, which I'm sure they would love. So it's a really unique position to be in, that certainly the Australian motorsport fan is very unique. So the fan base is around a Nissen fan base, and we have growth metrics attached to that. From that, we build our digital community and we make sure that we're giving them content that they're interested in, which also gives us the opportunity to find out who they are and what they want. From that, we can then map what the conversion is over time. So this is not that we expect to be selling more Nissens day one. We know that that's not how it works. And that delivers us an ROI. This is not a silver bullet, and it does make assumptions, just like any, I think, ROI matrix does. But what it does do is it creates this really unique framework, which is this, that it holds us, the rights holder, and even our race team totally accountable to the result. What I mean by that is, for this to work, we need to have a strong fan base, and there are two key things that need to happen for that. One is the sport needs to be healthy. So the sport needs to be attracting new fans and growing. Two, the race team needs to be successful. So when our race team is going really, really well, we know that increases our overall fan base. And thirdly, it's incumbent on us to provide activations and experiences for these Nissen fans that they wouldn't have otherwise got, and not jam retail marketing messaging down their throats. From a community engagement point of view, it's up to us and it's up to the race team again to provide the experiences. And the key thing I'd call out here is, if we wanted to build that database up to, say, 250,000 people, we could do that in a week. We'd just do a 10-car giveaway, and we'd have a database of 250,000 people. And then a week later, we'd have the highest opt-out rate you've ever seen. Never get to speak to those people again, and the conversion will plummet. So I can't do that. So I can't be lazy. So the benefit of this model is that throughout it, it holds us all to account, which is really, really important. And this helps build trust globally as well, because working in a big company, obviously it's important that they understand that you are being robust in your approach. I want to just touch on the three sports quickly, and I'll show a video for each. Motorsport, I think the image I've got there is a really good summary for it anyway, which is you can see all the Nissen, they're actually called, they're Nismo crazies called the flag wavers, and at events they take it in turns so the flag never stops waving. It's remarkable. But the fans follow the brand. So the difference in Australian motorsport compared to, say, Formula One is that avid fans will follow their favourite driver. In Australia, fans follow the manufacturer first, the team second, and the driver third, which seems totally counterintuitive. But to give you a statistic on it, there's a question in some research we've got: who is your favourite driver? 35% of the fans say Craig Lowndes, and Craig has done an amazing job over 20 years to build his brand. You'll never guess what the next statistic is. It's around 30%. Favourite driver? I don't have one. And then after that, it's 11%, 6%, 2%, 1%. So while Craig Lowndes is an anomaly, that helps us justify, okay, people are going to follow the manufacturer and they're going to follow the team. What a great opportunity as a car brand, because especially when you're a volume manufacturer in it, and it is hard to stand out. We've built the property on heritage. We had to get out of the sport in '93 because we were a bit too successful, so they banned us. It is relevant and it's exciting, and it aligns to SUV audience, which is really, really important to us. I want to show you a video. When I talked before about we have to provide something genuine that they wouldn't have got otherwise, we have an activation we take to most motorsport events called Best Seats in the House. And it's basically a huge viewing platform at one of the better corners of the track. And to get access, you just need to be a Nissen owner or a Nissen fan. Show your car key, be wearing the merchandise, and we'll look after you. Now, over a race weekend, we'll put around 2,000 people through that venue. It's not necessarily about them and them having that great experience. It's showing everyone else that we do look after our fans and we look after our owners who have to spend a lot of money to go to these events anyway. I want to show you an activation we ran recently at Sandown that was targeted exactly at Nissen owners, Nissen fans, and also some media, which is, I've got to call out, it's not an original idea, we did steal it from Japan. It's called Nissen Circuit Safari. It's really hard to get people close to racing because it's dangerous, but working with supercars, and when you see this, you'll understand what a legal nightmare this was, but it was really well worth it. We basically stuck our fans on minibuses, sent them out onto the racetrack doing 40 kilometres an hour, and then released 9 race cars at full speed. And here is a video just to show you what that was like.
Hi everyone, welcome aboard. We are going on Nissen Circuit Safari today at Sandown. A chance for you to see some great heritage cars, the current ultimate supercars in their natural habitat, and you've never ever seen them before. This is going to be a whole pile of fun. The Bathurst winning 1991 car at Restore. Check this out.
Yep.
That's the other headshot.
Yeah, so that wasn't hairy at all, especially when it was raining. But that we really wanted to bring that to life. It was difficult to start with because when they do that in Japan, they actually send buses out in genuine free practice sessions. So there's not been an accident yet, I've been told. But full credit again, to rights holders. The importance as a sponsor for risk taking is really important. And as you can imagine, an organisation like Supercars and the Confederation of Australian Motorsport, they were pretty hesitant to start with, but that wouldn't have come to life if they didn't work hard with us at it. You'd never get that sort of experience if we didn't provide it. So I think that's really important to show this is where sponsorship is going. From a sponsor's point of view, that we have to be able to provide really unique access to fans. And again, it's not necessarily about talking about the product or goods that we're trying to sell. From a netball perspective, we're just so rapt to be part of this sport, and this has been a really huge landmark year for them with the collective bargaining agreement, the alignment with Nine, and as a broadcaster, they've been sensational in the way that they've promoted the sport, and there is some really strong talent in here. We've got some fantastic ambassadors, Joe Weston, Caitlin Bassett, Sherelle McMahon, and we've got a lot of ambassadors that we work with, but we are just so impressed with how these guys are working. So from a point of view, from Nissen's point of view, it's obviously a really strong alignment to our target audience. The ability to have some soulless activity. So we've got category exclusivity, and I should have probably put a little asterisk up there because there are obviously 2 incumbents that were already involved in Holden and Mazda, and we totally respect that. But the ability for us to activate from grassroots level through our dealerships, working with their clubs and associations, right through to the Australian Diamonds, who I think are Australia's most successful sporting team, and if I've got that wrong, punch me later. So look, this is a really important and milestone sponsorship for us, and getting everyone internally excited about it has been really, really easy. I want to show another interpretation of Nissen Best Seats, and just again trying to provide Nissen owners with some reward at game.
Nissen X Trail. One legend. Hello, sir. What's your name? Steve. Harley. Good to meet you. David. Enjoy the game. Backseat. Who's your favourite team? The Vixens? Yeah. Hello, brother. Thank you, Scotty. Lovely Nissen GTR you've got here. Borderline vintage. Beautiful. Hey mate, we just want to give you a netball. Keep rocking the Nissen good times.
Going to the game today?
Who's going to win the final this year? Vixens.
You want a hat, sir? You want a Nissen hat? There you go, sir.
This is the
Good man. Enjoyed the game. These guys won the main prize.
Congratulations, you've been upgraded to
What a
Nissen.
prize.
Seats in the headers.
Enjoyed the game.
Hey, we're here with our family that have arrived in a Nissen Extra. We're going to take them inside and get them all kitted up.
For your chance to win a free upgrade to the Nissen best seats in the house.
Make sure you drive your Nissen to the game.
What lads? And then I'll just touch on our football partnership with Melbourne City. And Guy centre of screen, isn't he a hero? If anyone's met him, I'm sure you'll agree, he's one of the nicest people you could ever work with as well. The City Football Group is a global partnership with Nissen. So prior to the Hyundai exclusivity arrangement changing with A-League, we were already involved with Melbourne City, but we called it the Voldemort sponsorship because we couldn't say its name. But that changed last year for us, and we'd had time to build up our relationship with City Football Group. So locally, they're great to activate with, but globally, they provide us a really unique opportunity to take people to amazing experiences. And it's also, we've got a whole of football approach because of the global partnership with the UEFA Champions League. So for the last 2 years, we've been able to reward some fans and take them to the UEFA Champions League final in Milan and Cardiff. I just want to show a video. Again, this talks to providing unique experience to fans. When we were about to announce this, we wanted to surprise a couple of Melbourne City fans with a trip to Milan. And the guys at Melbourne City said, we've got this fan, his name's Dion, he's 15 years old, and we're pretty sure he's going to be a broadcaster within the next 2 years. His Insta following is out of this world, and he's a really nice young guy. So we surprised he and another fan by taking him to a final, and they thought that was the prize. And this video shows, I guess, some of the emotion behind us, telling them what they were actually being offered.
Thank you for accepting the offer to come and
I actually have one more surprise for you, which you don't know about.
without your fans coming along, mate, we can't get out there and play. But I have an invitation for you on behalf of Nissen and Melbourne City.
To fly to Milan and watch the UEFA Champions League final.
The atmosphere at San Siro was just crazy, you know. Every football fan's dream really to go there, experience a Champions League final. You couldn't hear the person next to you, just so loud, you know. Atletico fans, Real Madrid fans, just absolutely noise, crazy.
It's Ronaldo!
This experience has been phenomenal, and for Nissen to provide a couple of Melbourne City fans an experience like this, it just makes you feel like they want to be more than just a name on the sleeve. They want to get into the roots of the club, and they actually care about the fans and what's important to the club, and it's so clear that they want to connect Melbourne City with the rest of the world.
So I'm going to finish up now because we've gone a little bit over. So I guess the key outtakes for us is that obviously as a sponsor, we're noticing all the changes in sport, short form versions of sport, the emergence of esport, but we're changing with it. So the way that we interact with rights holders is certainly changing, and I think you'll see that traditional model start to really change quite significantly in the next few years. I mean, in summary, we need to play, as sponsors, we're responsible to play a credible role in providing these unique experiences to consumers, otherwise it's not going to work. As I said, we have to complement, we can't interrupt. There's a robust platform and ROI model prior to the commencement is really important. So we spent a lot of time, netball's a great example, we spent 15 months planning out what success looked like. And that is why we've got a lot of confidence in the future of that property. And it goes without saying, digital communities and storytelling has just become so critical, especially with fragmentation of media and the availability of fan vision and all those sorts of things. And then finally, traditional sponsorship assets, while expected, they're becoming less relevant. The example I use is, I wear a suit to work because I work in corporate. I didn't get the job because I wore a suit, and I don't get paid more because I wear a suit, but it's expected that that's how I'll turn up. So while we have an expectation around logo exposure, for, I guess, more established brands that don't have an awareness issue, it's becoming less and less relevant. And that's me. Thank you very much.